I remember the exact moment my mom told me we weren't celebrating Christmas together this year. Her voice was calm, almost casual, but it hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Pause, my heart sank, and for a brief second, I couldn't speak. I froze, staring at her as if my silence could undo her words. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. The weight of years of being overlooked, dismissed, and compared, crashed down on me. I thought about every holiday I'd spent in the background, always helping, always giving, always making sure everyone else's happiness came first. And now, that golden holiday glow, the warmth I'd clung to as a child, felt tarnished, cold, and distant. I glanced at my phone, wondering if maybe, just maybe, this was a misunderstanding. But no notifications or messages could rewrite reality. She had made her choice. She was picking sides, and I was on the outside. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine, but the scent didn't comfort me. It mocked me. Every corner seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside me, and muttered, almost without thinking, "Fine." On the surface, it sounded like compliance. But inside, I was seething. I realized in that moment that I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't allow her favoritism and neglect to define me any longer. Something had to change. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel hurt, I felt alive with a quiet determination. This Christmas wasn't going to be about exclusion or silent suffering. It was going to be about planning my comeback. And as I made that silent vow, I knew one thing for certain: I was done being invisible. Spent the next few hours reflecting on my relationship with my mom, trying to understand where I fit in this family. Pause, I've always been the responsible one, the quiet child who avoids conflict, who keeps the peace even when it costs me. I do the things nobody notices, the invisible work that holds everything together. Meanwhile, my sibling, the golden child, gets all the praise, attention, and privileges I never did. The contrast stings more than I care to admit. Every Christmas, I was the helper. I hung the lights, baked the cookies, wrapped the presents. I made sure everyone else had a perfect holiday while my own wishes stayed tucked away, ignored, and forgotten. I never spoke up because I believed family meant sacrifice, loyalty, and obedience. I thought that love required me to put myself last, but deep down, I felt invisible. The resentment built quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it became a constant weight in my chest. Every overlooked achievement, every subtle insult, every missed opportunity piled on top of one another. I realized my mom's words this year didn't just hurt, they struck at the very core of my identity, and yet, amidst the hurt and frustration, I discovered a quiet resilience I hadn't acknowledged before. These years of being overlooked had taught me to endure, to strategize, and to survive. I started to understand that the very patterns that once diminished me could also fuel my strength. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine something different. I realized I might be stronger, smarter, and more capable than they ever imagined. And in that quiet moment of clarity, I made a silent vow: this year everything would be different. I tried to salvage the holiday, even though my mom had made it clear she didn't want me there. Pause, I suggested small compromises, cooking a dish, sending gifts, even a short video call so I could feel included. Each suggestion was met with rejection, sharp and almost cruel. Every refusal stung more than the last, and I could feel my frustration bubbling beneath the surface. My siblings' smug satisfaction didn't go unnoticed. They seemed to enjoy watching the drama unfold, like a private victory at my discomfort. I forced myself to stay calm, but inside, I was bristling. I realized that if I wanted to protect myself, I couldn't rely on anyone's sense of fairness. I started documenting everything: screenshots, notes, phone call logs. Each little detail became part of a growing record that I could no longer ignore. Confided in a close friend, explaining what had happened. Their response was simple but powerful: you deserve more than manipulation. You deserve respect. Their words stuck with me, like a spark lighting a slow-burning fire. I began to see the situation from a new perspective, not just as hurt, but as an opportunity to take control. With every interaction, tension grew in my mind. I started planning, not out of malice, but for clarity, for protection, and for my own peace of mind. I realized that if I was being pushed away, I would reclaim my voice in my narrative, even if it meant confronting uncomfortable truths, but doubts lingered. Was I too late? Would my evidence be enough? Could I prove what had been happening all these years, or had it already gone too far? And in that moment, a realization hit me. I wasn't just hurt, I was preparing for something bigger. The situation spiraled further when my mom started openly boasting to relatives about excluding me. She painted me as the troublemaker, the one responsible for the tension, while my sibling basked in the praise and sympathy I once craved. I felt humiliated, a strange mix of embarrassment and disbelief. But beneath that humiliation, there was an unexpected liberation. There was no longer any pretense. The reality was out in the open, and I couldn't be gaslighted anymore. Began secretly recording conversations and keeping every message, every text, and every call. I created a timeline, documenting events as they unfolded. Patterns of manipulation emerged that had been invisible in real time: small lies, favoritism, subtle guilt trips. It was infuriating to see how calculated some of it had been, but also clarifying. At the same time, I quietly built a support network. Friends and distant relatives who understood my value and frustrations became my sounding board. I journaled obsessively, noting every microaggression, every moment I was made to feel small, and every instance of favoritism and emotional manipulation. These pages became my sanctuary, a place to reflect without judgment. Slowly, my internal monologue shifted. I no longer just wanted validation, I wanted accountability. I wanted my voice to matter and my existence to be recognized. The more I observed, the more I realized that I had the power to turn this situation around. My resentment, once quiet and internal, became strategic. I started to plan my actions with clarity and intention. I understood, finally, that without action, this cycle would continue for years. And in that moment, I made a bold decision. I would not stay a victim. I decided to compile every piece of evidence I could find, treating it like a case file. Screenshots, videos, emails, and voice notes all went into digital folders, each labeled meticulously. Every item told a story of favoritism, neglect, and subtle manipulation. I even dug up old holiday photos and messages, comparing them side by side to highlight the disparities between how my sibling and I were treated. Each file became a piece of undeniable truth, a thread in the tapestry of my experience. As I worked, my emotions swirled. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, but it was accompanied by a strange satisfaction. For the first time, I felt empowered. I realized that I could no longer be gaslight, no longer silenced. These documents were more than evidence, they were a shield and a sword, reflected on the power of documentation. This wasn't just about confronting my mom, it was about my own clarity and emotional survival. I practiced how I would present my findings, rehearsing a calm, factual, and unemotional delivery. I imagined the moment when everything I had endured would be impossible to deny. Through this process, I felt a transformation. The hurt child I once was now stepping aside, replaced by a strategic adult who no longer relied on hope or empty apologies. Anticipation and nerves mingled in my chest as I realized that this evidence could change everything. And in that quiet, determined moment, I finally decided it was time to confront my mom. It started as a casual family phone call, but what I uncovered changed everything. My mom, the person I had trusted for my entire life, had been hiding financial support she gave exclusively to my sibling. I felt blindsided, a sharp mix of shock and disbelief, but beneath that, there was a strange sense of vindication. This confirmed every suspicion I had about favoritism and deliberate exclusion. Remember the exact moment I realized the truth. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through receipts, bank transfers, and digital records, all pointing to the same undeniable fact. The betrayal cut deep, but it also fueled my determination. Up until that moment, I had been observing and documenting, but now, the story shifted. I knew I had to move from passive witness to active confrontation. This wasn't just a holiday dispute. The inequity ran deeper, systemic and intentional, shaping my entire upbringing and my sense of self-worth. Memories of past Christmases, birthdays, and family milestones flashed through my mind, now painted with a harsh clarity I couldn't ignore. The years of feeling invisible, unappreciated, and manipulated suddenly had a concrete explanation, prepared mentally for the confrontation, rehearsing my words, my tone, and my stance. My emotions were a whirlwind: sadness for the years lost, anger at the injustice, relief at finally knowing the truth, and a fierce empowerment I hadn't felt before. It was heavy, complicated, and strangely liberating. The audience, I imagined, could feel the weight of this discovery. This wasn't just a holiday argument, it was a lifetime of manipulation exposed in real time. And in that moment, I knew, with unwavering clarity, that my next move would change everything. For the first time, I set firm boundaries with my mom. Pause. I told her clearly that I would no longer tolerate manipulation, subtle guilt trips, or favoritism. I explained that I was taking steps to protect my emotional well-being and my independence. This wasn't an empty threat, it was a declaration of my self-worth. I minimized contact where I could, carefully limiting interactions that felt toxic or draining. I set clear financial and emotional boundaries, refusing to participate in events designed to humiliate or exclude me. Every decision felt heavy, yet liberating. I wrestled with the internal conflict, fear of confrontation versus the relief of finally asserting control over my life. At the same time, I planned new ways to celebrate holidays on my own terms. I imagined traditions with friends and supportive family members who truly valued me, creating moments of joy that were authentic, not performative. This step felt symbolic, a public and private reclaiming of my power and self-respect. I realized survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about building a life where I was seen, valued, and respected. I moved from being reactive to proactive, from trapped in a toxic cycle to empowered, confident in my ability to navigate family dynamics with strategy and grace. The audience, I hoped, could see the shift in me. From someone who suffered in silence to someone who could stand tall without sacrificing dignity. I understood that reclaiming my life required courage, patience, and foresight, and that every choice now carried weight. And as I set these boundaries, I braced myself for the inevitable fallout. The aftermath of setting my boundaries shocked my family in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Pause. My mom's favoritism, once taken for granted, was now subtly questioned by relatives who had witnessed my absence and my quiet stand. I could see it in their conversations, the glances that lingered a little too long. Meanwhile, my sibling began to feel the social repercussions of years of unchecked entitlement. Invitations that once ignored me now acknowledged my presence, small gestures that signaled a shift in the family dynamic. I noticed these changes carefully, documenting each one in my journal. Satisfaction mixed with caution. Relationships are fragile, I reminded myself, and while I could celebrate progress, I had to remain aware of potential setbacks. The power of proof and standing firm had tangible effects far beyond what I expected. Karma, I reflected, wasn't about revenge. It was about natural consequences for repeated actions, and watching these ripple effects unfold was both humbling and validating. I could see my own personal growth reflected in these small changes. I was no longer defined by their choices, their approval, or their recognition. Celebrated my survival quietly, savoring the knowledge that my actions had created real impact. Every confrontation, every piece of evidence, and every boundary set had reshaped my family dynamic. Standing up for myself revealed the truth: asserting your worth isn't selfish, it's necessary. And yet, a question lingered in my mind as I observed the shifts. I wondered if reconciliation was possible, or even deserved. I knew the final confrontation with my mom had to happen. Pause. I gathered all the evidence I had meticulously compiled over the months, screenshots, emails, recordings, and notes, and prepared myself to speak calmly, from a place of clarity rather than anger. When I finally presented the facts, I could see her reactions shift. There was defensiveness at first, a flush of denial, and then slowly, moments of quiet reflection. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of unspoken truths finally surfacing. I described, step by step, the patterns of favoritism, neglect, and manipulation I had endured. As I spoke, I could feel a mix of vulnerability and justice intertwining inside me. I realized I wasn't just telling a story, I was reclaiming my narrative. Every instance of dismissal and unfair treatment was now undeniable. When the evidence was fully laid out, I shared my decision. While I was open to the possibility of rebuilding our relationship, I would not compromise my boundaries or my self-respect. The past could not dictate my future, and my dignity was non-negotiable. This moment wasn't about punishment, it was about recognition, accountability, and empowerment, reflected on what survival truly meant, acknowledging betrayal, proving the truth with evidence, and reclaiming your power. I realized that standing up for yourself doesn't just change your story, it creates ripple effects in every corner of your life. I could feel the strength I had nurtured over months crystallize in that room, a tangible proof that I was no longer invisible. And now, I turn to the audience, asking a question that lingers long after the video ends. Have you ever had to stand up to family and reclaim your worth? I hope it sparks reflection, conversation, and courage. I step away from that confrontation, a calm certainty settling over me. I know, finally, that I have reclaimed my narrative and my life. I am seen, heard, and respected on my own terms.